Hello random person, Sab Nino here. Hello random person. Hello random person, Sab Nino here. And remember that It's a Wonderful Sponge title reaction I keep bringing up due to the high view count? I'm sorry, I just find it interesting how a 3-minute title reaction got so many views. Anyways, I've been wanting to do a follow-up on this scene since October, but college kept getting in the way, and due to this, a ton of information has popped up in the past 5 months. So what I decided to do is recap what we have so far. So why not join me on this incredible journey? Incredible is an overstatement. One thing I'd like to bring up is in my original video, I tried predicting the plot of the movie and said it was gonna be an It's a Wonderful Life parody. Yeah, it's probably gonna be a It's a Wonderful Life parody. But I can see this film either being heartwarming or flat out terrible. How would I do it? I would somehow make SpongeBob realize how much of a nuisance he is to a lot of society. Squidward, Plankton, and even Mrs. Puff having enough with SpongeBob's annoying ignorance and finally putting it through his soft skull. After he realizes and starts thinking, what's it like if I was never born? Maybe the Flying Dutchman shows him what it's like without existence, you know, like in the movie. Which I was actually right about. However, it's also an origin story. How the parody is intersected is unclear, and we still don't know how it's gonna be executed, but we know quite a bit of the origin story as a whole. The origin story is SpongeBob as a kid meeting the cast for the first time in Camp Coral. Cliché, sure, but I think it could have potential if it's done well, especially considering SpongeBob is well known for taking clichés and twisting them, such as the underdog trope in Band Geeks and the road trip story in the SpongeBob SquarePants movie. We don't know which characters will be at Camp Coral, but my main concern is that they include Sandy, since she already has an established introduction in the show. If she was there, I'd probably just consider its film as its own separate thing from the show. However, I wouldn't mind the rest of the gang. His interaction with Patrick was just a quick gag. When SpongeBob moved into his pineapple in Truth or Square, we don't even know if this is how they first met. And Mr. Krabs... Actually, he'd be too old for camp considering he's much older than SpongeBob, but imagine how Gary would look. He'd be freaking adorable. Also, this film will have a live-action surface scene. If I've learned anything in pop culture, it's that it's illegal to cancel The Simpsons, and to have a SpongeBob film without the surface. On paper, this plot sounds like an utter mess. They're trying to combine the origin story with a parody followed up with the surface. Heck, if I was writing this, I'd probably take off the surface shot due to it feeling unneeded. However, Sponge Out of Water was also a cluttered mess of a story, but due to the execution, it worked so well that you don't even notice it unless you overanalyze it. So, I'm going to keep an open mind with this one. The story was done by Aaron Springer, who pretty much worked all over the show, even in its best seasons. Tim Hill, who worked on the first film, and... Alvin and the Chipmunks? Hop? Grumpy Cat's worst Christmas ever? I am so sorry, man. And Jonathan Abiel and Glenn Berger, I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing these names wrong, are writers who worked on the second film as long as a mixed bag of other animated films. So, I think for the most part, this film is in pretty decent hands, though maybe an extra push could help. In terms of animation, I'd like to mention how this is the first film to have the aspect ratio of 1280 by 540 instead of 1920 by 1080, which is what the show is doing right now, which I am all for. I can imagine this film looking great with that format. The original plan of the movie, and I even stated it in the first video, was to make the film traditionally animated for CG in the surface segments. In terms of visuals, I know it's a 2D and 3D hybrid like the second film, and since the logos are rather similar, it's probably a safe assumption to make that the visuals will be quite similar as well. But I guess the crew just playfully went, whoops, all CG. The animation this time is also outsourced by Micro Animation, who actually has a pretty decent track record. Captain Underpants, The Little Prince. They did work on Sherlock Gnomes as well, but we don't talk about that. When I first heard about this news, I was pissed since I felt like it just furthered the stereotype that 2D animation is dead, and it kind of does. However, as time went on, I became more open to this. SpongeBob has always been a rather experimental show, trying different types of media throughout the years. Not to mention, if you really think about it, SpongeBob looks really good in 3D. The characters are designed in such a way that they're cartoony enough, but geometric enough to fit in both the second and third dimension. Heck, even the fourth did very well. Not to mention, this explains why SpongeBob usually looks pretty good on its merchandising. Also, I don't think the fact that the animation is outsourced will affect the quality of this movie. Micro does a really good job with expressive animation, but not to the point where it's too wacky and over the top, which has been a minor issue with season 11. This is minor, but the thing that worries me is that the surface shots might be less textured than the second film. But I don't think the texturing problem would be that big a deal with the underwater scenes. Not to mention, there is a chance that Paramount might chime in to help with those. They are really good for texturing after all. For better or for worse. Sonic, I love your legs. Crush me with your thighs. Also, Zeus Service and Rudy Bloss are storyboarders. Zeus has worked on the show for years, and I'll get to Rudy later on, including the visual director of Batman vs. Superman. So, gritty reboot perhaps? The music is set to feature big name celebrities as well, but right now it's unclear on who specifically will be on it. Let's hope it's not sicko mode. However, it will feature Hans Zimmer, who worked on The Lion King. I've heard stuff, and I absolutely love his work, especially with heavy emotions. For a film inspired by one of the most meaningful holiday specials, it seems to be a pretty well fit. The film as a whole premieres on May 22nd, 2020, at least for now anyway. The production of the film has been incredibly on and off, and it just started production of January of this year. This movie has been announced almost immediately after the second film, so it seems odd that they'd start production so late. However, I don't know for sure, but I have a slight assumption to why the production might be like this. The original plot of the film was completely different from what we have now. How do I know this? Well, Rudy Bloss, who I mentioned earlier, actually put some deleted scenes of the film on his resume. And according to these scenes, and according to Vincent Waller, the plot was originally going to be about space cats. Yikes. And I thought the Illuminati Dolphin and David Hasselhoff were weird. I have a feeling this might have been worked on a good chunk of production considering the animatics are really high quality and polished, which could be another reason why this film was all CG opposed to 2D. But then again, those are just theories. I'd like to say that I'm grateful this film was scrapped. It's more original, but it feels so disconnected from the show. If I just showed you this shot of the spaceship, or these cats, you'd probably assume they were from a completely different show. Sadly, since these clips are soundless, we're missing some context. Like, why did Patrick dig up this worm? Did Sandy's vehicle serve a purpose? Why do they have the dolphin ship? Is it associated with bubbles? Was the SpongeBob and Gary montage set to some sort of Ed Sheeran song? I have a sneaking suspicion we might never get an answer. But considering how many deleted scenes were shown from Sponge Out of Water, anything is possible. So far, this film sounds like a mixed bag. With third films, you never know what to expect. Sometimes they're good like Madagascar 3, or pretty bad ones such as Shrek the Third. When I heard about this news around like 7 o'clock in the morning, I was infuriated. Not many signs of the original crew being present, an origin story, fully CG with a celebrity soundtrack, how many things they're trying to shoehorn in. It sounded like either a huge middle finger, or just every other mediocre kids flick that's only meant to sell toys and enforce the mindset that animation is only for kids. However, the more I thought about it, the more I'm opened up to the concept displayed for the film. For all I know, this could be another train wreck, but who knows? Maybe this is a good way to introduce a new decade of kids to the franchise. Oh, wait, they have spin-offs for that. Anyways, what do you think of the news provided so far? Are you hyped? Are you bummed? As usual, please let me know in the comments. After you watch the video, please follow the links provided on my social media, support me on Redbubble, check out my website, and subscribe along with ringing the bell and letting people know that I still exist. With that said, eat some mochi, watch cartoons, and drink some boba. Hasta la vista.